He's a tough street-fighting lawyer with the highest ratings for honesty and integrity. He's here to answer your legal questions and get you the help you need. You're listening to The Legal Lowdown with your lawyer, Joe Ingram of Joe Ingram Law. Joe Ingram has more than 20 years' experience fighting for his clients here in the state of Alabama. Joe's focus is criminal defense and family law. You don't have to face your legal issue alone. You've got Joe Ingram on your side. In case of sensitive legal matters, you can always reach out directly to Joe at joeingramlaw.com and arrange for a private consultation. And now, Alabama's defender of the defenseless, protector of the people, and all-around good guy, Joe Ingram.
All right. You're listening to The Legal Lowdown with Joe Ingram, your Alabama lawyer. We want to remind you that for the month of December, we will be doing 3 one-hour abbreviated shows. Coming back in January of 26, we're going to go back to the 2-hour format. So we are in season 2, and we are in podcast 2 for this next year. Please stay tuned in the coming weeks. We are going to have a big announcement about possibly being put in other markets. Please stay tuned. All right. So, this is the Legal Lowdown with Joe Ingram. We do divorce work and we do criminal work all over the state of Alabama, from Huntsville, Birmingham, Montgomery, Mobile, Tuscaloosa, and even Dothan if you have serious money. It's a joke. It's an inside joke. Go listen to the first podcast. You'll understand why. We welcome you to listen to our show. We want you to listen in. We want you to download it. We want you to share it with your friends. We also want you to do something very important. Go to the iHeart Radio app. Click on the little red microphone. That is the Spy for Rent hotline. Yes, that is the Spy for Rent hotline. If you have any questions, any jokes, any comments, anything you want us to cover in the future, click on the little red button, the Spy for Rent hotline. We'll discuss it in coming weeks. This is going to be a big year for us. In 2026, it's an election year. And I have been so fortunate and so blessed that I have been promised almost everybody that's running for a statewide office that has asked to be on the show. So we do legal and we also do political because the two coincide and they both make a difference because the people that we elect for offices run our state, run our lives, make the decisions to make all of us have a better life. So tune in, folks. You're going to get some good stuff over the next year. Couple little cases I want to talk about in the news this week. We always talk about national legal news and we talk about state legal news. National legal news. Folks, have you been following the gentleman that allegedly killed our buddy out in Utah? He was in court this week. He was in dress clothes. And the two issues this week, this was the first time he's appeared in court since the shooting. And Tyler Robinson. And the judge said no pictures of him in handcuffs or shackles, got to protect the integrity of the process. He is presumed innocence. And then there was a big fight about the social media aspect and media access to all the court proceedings. Folks, this is going to be a circus probably for the next 2 or 3 years legally. And what the average person doesn't understand is what is this going to cost all of us in the end for this process. On the one hand, if you are a defense lawyer, you say, I don't care what the cost is. Before you're going to put somebody to death, you want to expend all resources to make sure that the process is fair. The other story I want to talk about, well, the other two stories I want to talk about in the state, if you've been following the news about the Alabama Medical Marijuana Board, yes, it's been going on for 4 or 5 years. It was in the news yesterday that the general counsel said, we are about to start issuing permits to have a medical marijuana card. Folks, hold your breath. I still don't believe it. We've been doing litigation for 4 years, and I've been in some of those cases. The other story I want to mention about legally, the FBI is going to have 4,000 officers that are coming up to the Redstone Arsenal in the new FBI buildings. Folks, Huntsville is going to be the city of the state because of all the technology, all the infrastructure they have up there. Oh, also, by the way, Eli Lilly just announced the other day they're putting a big plant up in Huntsville. Huntsville's got a lot of money coming in up there, folks, and it trickles down. Jobs, houses, cars, homes, people going to restaurants. The money flows all the way through the market. How fortunate we are to be in Alabama. Another big story that we're going to talk about, Governor Doug Jones has just announced that he's going to run for governor of the state of Alabama. Folks, United States Senator Doug Jones is going to be on the show next Friday. Yes, I said it. He's going to be on the show next Friday. All right, so let's get to the most important part of the show. We are fortunate, I told you last week, the Honorable Judge Brian Huff has agreed to give us 50 minutes of his time today. He is a Jefferson County divorce judge for the 10th Judicial Circuit, and he's here in the studio. Judge Huff, how are you, sir?
Doing great. Thank you for having me, Joe, and I feel kind of honored to know that I'm opening for Doug Jones. He's going to be with you next week.
Well, you got to go before him.
Hey, thank you for having me here.
Thank you, Judge. Judge, for the people out there that are listening to this, and there's more than you realize, tell the audience a little bit how you got to be where you are in life, Judge.
Well, first thing, I want to make a comment on one thing you said, Joe, if I can, and then I'll get to that. You made a comment about running our lives. I think what most judges out there would tell you, myself included, I don't want to run anyone's life. I want people to run their own lives. And I think we can talk a little bit about that later on. But as far as I go, I mean, I grew up on the north end of the county up around Brookside, went to Gardendale High School, went on to the University of Alabama and Birmingham School of Law. So I worked full-time and went to school at night for 4 years and then practiced law for about 10 years. After 10, I became the presiding judge out in Jefferson County Family Court, which is our juvenile court here in Jefferson County, and was there until 2013, went back into private practice for about 12 years, and then was reappointed to the bench about 2.5 years ago in domestic relations court. So I have about 30 years of experience in the law, and primarily family law and domestic relations and family court. So that's where I come from.
Oh, that's great. Judge, don't want to put you on the spot here.
You can.
Do you prefer family court or divorce court?
I like them both for different reasons. We did, I think, the family court, I believe, puts the court in a position to really, really help people. You see everything from families with DHR involvement, and you can empower those families to overcome some of the obstacles they face. Or if you have just exceptionally horrible situations, you can save those children from what could be a lifetime nightmare. And other types of cases, obviously, as well. Juvenile delinquents, maybe you can get in there and work with them and head off a lifetime of criminal behavior and get them put on the right path. Domestic court's a little bit different. I used to tell people when I practiced law, I didn't get a whole lot of Christmas cards because when people go through a divorce, once it's over, they want to forget about it. And I don't blame them. It's not something you relish looking back on. But I think as a judge, I have the ability to make the process a little easier for people. I have to keep in mind that we have children involved in a lot of these cases, and they don't have representation typically. And it's my job in part to look out for those kids to make sure that their parents don't get in the way of them, but also to make sure that it's as fair as can be given the circumstances. And if I can take what's a horribly contentious case and bring a little bit of peace to it when possible, I consider that a win. If I have a horribly contentious case and I have to make the decision, that's why I'm there. That's what I get paid for. I can't solve all the problems out there, but what I can do, I think a divorce judge can not make the problems that already exist even worse.
Fair enough. Speaking with Judge Huff today on the Legal Lowdown with Joe Ingram. Judge, we talked about when you agreed to come on, we talked about what we wanted people to hear and understand. Tell the audience out there the role of a judge in a divorce case, because it's a bench trial. It's not a jury trial. Most people don't really know the legal process until they get there.
Well, in Alabama, like most cases, you don't have the jury making the decisions. If you have a car accident case or a criminal case, the judge is considered the finder or the trier of the law. If there's a legal issue, then the judge deals with that. If you have a factual issue, was Judge Huff there at the scene? Well, that's up to the jury to listen to the evidence and make the determination. A bench trial, which is what divorces are, and which is what family court was, the judge plays both of those roles. So not only does he or she have to make the decision as it pertains to the law, but they also have to make factual decisions or factual conclusions as well. So, I mean that's tough. It's easier in that we don't have to organize juries. We don't have to go through all of that, but we hold the weight of determining what are the facts as we believe them, what is more likely than not to have happened.
Hey, Judge, one thing I want to talk about, I kid you about it a lot, but it's very important from when I was in law school and took equity. Most people don't know that in the state of Alabama, a circuit court judge is the most powerful judge. We've had this conversation because you have power in law and in equity. And explain that, because you basically just said it talking about being a bench trial judge.
Well, there might be other people in the state who would argue about who's the most powerful, and I certainly don't claim that.
Oh, Judge,
but I apply the law, and I have those legal findings that I can make. But we also have equity, and while we don't specifically have equity courts any longer, domestic judges have the ability to take into account what's fair. And I'll use an example. In some states, you have what's called community property. And that's where you go in and there's an automatic assumption on the front end that the husband gets half or the wife gets half. Or today, one partner gets half and the other partner gets the other half. Alabama's a little different. Alabama has what's called equitable division, and that relates to fairness. Given the facts and circumstances of a particular case, what is fair? And that can differ from judge to judge, from case to case, from county to county. And I think that's important too.
We're speaking with Judge Huff today on the Legal Lowdown. Judge, let me ask you this. We are so blessed here in Jefferson County. We have 4 dedicated divorce judges. You know this. You've practiced 5. Excuse me, Judge. I forget the 5th one. We are so blessed here because in other counties, the judges do everything. And where I'm going with this is because I practice up here all the time, and I come in and I think, well, why did it take me 2 weeks to get in a courtroom? Because we have, dedicated divorce judges. Talk about the caseload in Jefferson County, if you will.
Sure. And I just want to say we have 5 or 6 judges in Jefferson County who hear divorce cases. We have a couple in Bessemer who hear divorce cases, the Bessemer cutoff.
Right.
And then we have 4 in the Birmingham division where I am who hear nothing but domestic cases. Right now, my caseload, I have about 700 pending cases. They could involve divorces. They could involve post-divorce modifications of child support, alimony, custody. We have petitions for custody that we get out in in divorce court. We have petitions for protection from abuse which I dealt with today, which are domestic violence cases where the request is for a civil restraining order. So you might have a judge in Birmingham who has a docket with anywhere from 350 to 600 or 700 cases on it. And while we try and prioritize each individual case, you're probably not going to have a trial in 6 months in the Birmingham division of Jefferson County. And as recently as a couple years ago, the state took one of our judges from us and moved it to a different county. Yeah. Not divorce judge, but a Jefferson County judge. And so I think we need to hold on to the judges we have because we have a high caseload in Jefferson County.
Judge, speaking from the court perspective, and in a divorce case, if you're the prosecutor and you're trying to prove alimony or you're trying to prove custody, it's the plaintiff's burden of proof to make you got to prove your case. What does the court want to hear as to alimony or to prove who's the best parent for the best interest of the child for primary custody?
Obviously, those are two different things, and the law sets out certain factors that we're to look at. Let me preface it by saying this. I used to have a T-shirt that said, a good lawyer knows the law and a great lawyer knows the judge. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. And this is what it means. It doesn't mean that judge belongs to your sorority or is your hunting or fishing partner. It means you know how that judge thinks. You know what that individual judge wants to hear. We have, like I said, about 6 judges who hear divorce cases in Jefferson County, and we have probably 50 or more statewide, with the understanding that a lot of your listeners might not be in the Birmingham division of Jefferson County. I think you want a lawyer who is familiar with how that judge thinks. Personally, when I'm looking at custody, I want to know historically, leading up to the filing of the divorce, who has been the primary caretaker of the child. And by that, I mean, who changed the diapers? Who took the child to school? Who made dinner? Who fed the child? Who saw that the child was involved in particular activities? Who saw that the child had its immunizations? Who did the day-to-day work with the child? And you know, I started practicing law 30 years ago, and it's a little different today than it was back in the 90s when I practiced. You have both parents more and more often being involved at a similar level. We didn't have that as often back in the mid-90s when I started practicing. As for alimony, you know, we have a statute that relates to alimony. And I'm not going to quote it to you, but the amount of time you can actually award alimony depends on the length of time that the parties have been married. But that aside, a judge can look at things such as the earning ability of each party. Do you have one party who makes a substantial income while the other party stays home, takes care of the children? Do you have one party who has a professional or a doctorate degree while you have another party who didn't finish high school and doesn't have the same earning capacity? A judge can look at fault when it comes to alimony. I don't think it's as common today as it was in years past, but the judge has the authority to look at what caused the breakdown in the marriage. Was it adultery? Was it some sort of addiction that unfortunately we see more and more often nowadays? Those are probably two of the primary issues that we look at. There are, like I said, a list, but we could probably spend most of the show talking about those individual factors.
Yes, sir. When you talk about at fault in a divorce case, it's not as easy to prove infidelity as most people think anymore, because unless you just catch them with 8x10 glossies, you can assume a lot of things with social media. I mean, but I guess as the trier of fact and the trier of law, you've been around long enough, you can see what is red and what is blue, correct?
Well, I like to think so, but not always. I may be a judge, but I'm human. I want to mention something about that as well. Alabama has 12 grounds for divorce. 2 of them are what we call no-fault grounds, and they're incompatibility of temperament and irretrievable breakdown of the marriage. The other 10 are fault grounds, such as adultery, habitual drunkenness and drug addiction, etc. What a lot of people don't realize, and like I said, I practiced law for 20 years too, a lot of my clients didn't realize, if I file for divorce under a no-fault ground, incompatibility of temperament, irretrievable breakdown, I can still use the fact that the husband or the wife has done something that might fall under those other grounds to prove what I'm alleging. So if I have a husband who has a girlfriend and he's continued that relationship, I can use that evidence to prove there's an incompatibility of temperament. As I used to tell my clients, that's probably going to cause an irretrievable breakdown of the marriage. But specifically to your question, is it difficult to prove? Not as difficult as it would be in a criminal case. You have to prove that it's more likely than not that something happened. It's called a preponderance of the evidence.
That's the standard.
That's the standard you have to prove it by.
Right.
But I would say that I talk with lawyers all the time about filing on no-fault grounds because they can use the evidence they have, which would support a fault ground, to argue their irretrievable breakdown of the marriage.
Right. Judge, let me ask you a question. So when you have a trial, and let's say it has all the elements, and you know what I'm talking about, everything from custody, visitation, child support, alimony, division of assets, you got all the issues that run the gamut in a divorce trial. Are you a judge that you like both sides to give you proposed orders, or are you one that you like to hear the evidence and you want to think about it and compose your own order in the case?
I like proposed orders.
Do you?
And just because I ask for proposed orders does not mean that I haven't taken time and thought about it and edited those orders to fit what I would like to do in the case. It just makes my job more efficient. I want to say it makes it easier, and in a way it does, because I don't have to go back and draft each and everything that needs to go in there. I have good lawyers like you, Joe, who practice in front of me, and I know that they're going to go in and they're going to hit every bullet point that needs to be hit. And if all I have to do is go back and tweak child support or change a particular paragraph, then that's going to make it not only easier for me, but better for your client in the end. And my practice is I'll usually ask for a proposed order from both lawyers. I don't ask for one from just one lawyer.
No, I didn't mean that.
Sure.
I didn't mean that. And most judges that I practice in front of will ask for proposed orders from both sides, and they may copy and paste and pick some from this and pick some from that, and then they may adopt their own language.
Exactly.
That's what I meant by that.
Sure.
Okay, so when I come back, we're going to continue our conversation with Judge Brian Huff. He's a divorce judge in the 10th Judicial Circuit of Jefferson County. He's got wonderful experience. He's also running for re-election, folks, in 26. We need to keep people like this on the bench. He's an exceptional judge. We'll be back. All right, bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the Legal Lowdown with your lawyer, Joe Ingram of Joe Ingram Law. Don't forget to follow Joe's Legal Lowdown podcast on iHeart. If you need a private legal consultation, reach out to Joe on his website, joeingramlaw.com. Tune in again next Saturday for the Legal Lowdown with Joe Ingram. No representation is made that the quality of legal services to be performed is greater than the quality of legal services performed by any other lawyer. You're listening to the Legal Lowdown with Joe Ingram. Joe is a 20-year veteran of the Alabama courts specializing in criminal defense and family law. If you need a private legal consultation, email Joe at joeingramlaw.com. And now, welcome back to the Legal Lowdown with Joe Ingram.
All right. We're back. This is the Legal Lowdown with Joe Ingram. 105.5 WERC, just off the south side of the Barron's baseball field, and we heard the trains as we came in today. Today we have a special guest. We have Judge Brian Huff in the studio with us, and we're continuing our conversation. Judge, I have a question for you.
Okay.
If someone is out there, and you know as well as I do, come first of the year, everybody files for divorce. What does someone need to know about the legal process or the divorce process? What do they need to know and do their research on?
First of all, January is probably one of the busiest months for divorce lawyers for obvious reasons. Things slow down over the holidays. They'll say, we don't want to do this right now. I think that the most important thing that a person can do who is contemplating a divorce is talk with a lawyer. Talk with a lawyer. I know that lawyers are not cheap. But going through a divorce, it's some of the best money that you'll spend. In Alabama, you are not required to have a lawyer to go through a divorce. However, there are certain technicalities and certain documents that need to be filled out correctly and filed with the court in order for the court to have jurisdiction to enter a divorce, even if the parties agree to everything. And if those technicalities aren't met, the court cannot divorce you. Or if they do divorce you, you may not legally be divorced. So what does a person need to think about? I think they need to talk to good lawyers like you, Joe. I think they should interview a lawyer. They need to find out, what kind of experience do you have? How long have you been practicing? Where do you practice? I think, just like I said in the first segment, a good lawyer knows the law and a great lawyer knows the judge. It's important for a lawyer to have an idea of what a judge in that particular circuit wants to hear. And so interview your lawyers and know what you're looking for. Obviously, divorces are not cheap. So to the extent you want to minimize costs, if you can sit down with your spouse and have an idea of what each of you want, and maybe there are 2 or 3 issues that you cannot agree on, then that's going to minimize the costs that you spend. I describe a judge kind of like a triangle, where the base of the triangle at the bottom are the parties, and they know the most about what has happened in their marriage, which is the case. About midway up are the lawyers, and they know what the clients have told them, but certainly not everything.
They know their half.
They know their half, exactly. At the very top of that triangle is the judge. And that judge knows the least about the case of anyone involved. And when you have to try your case, you're trusting that judge who knows the very least about your case with making the ultimate decision affecting your life and your children's lives. And I think that's why mediation is so important. Now, I'll back up and say I have tried as a lawyer and as a judge thousands of cases in my career. And I'm in the middle of a 4-day trial as we sit here right now, and I'm happy to take that on, and I'm happy to make the decision. But to the extent possible, I think parties are better off if they can resolve their cases. So they need to know that. I don't think it's healthy for either party to go in wanting nothing but blood. And I've dealt with clients like that in the past, and I've seen it in court. And usually it doesn't come out exactly the way you want it. I think it's important. And I know I'm going on, but I have a few things I want to mention.
Come on, Judge.
I think it's good to have a good idea of what your finances are. And if you don't know, you don't need to rush down to Joe tomorrow and file a divorce. Maybe you rush down to Joe, but you take the time to get a grasp of what's there. Tax returns, investment account information, etc. You need to know what is there. Make sure you have the information that you need involving your children so that you can mount an adequate custody case and not be caught flat-footed. And these are things that, without a lawyer, probably wouldn't cross some people's minds. They would just know their wife came in drunk, or they caught their husband with his secretary, and they're furious and they want a divorce. The last thing that I would want them to know, and it isn't the last, but I know we only have a little bit of time left, a divorce isn't going to happen overnight. In Alabama, if you walk into Joe's office and Joe drafts an agreement for you, and both you and your spouse sign it, there is still a 30-day waiting period in the state of Alabama before the judge can sign off on it. And if you don't have an agreement, it's going to take 6 to 18 months, is my estimation, to end up with a trial before a judge. It obviously varies from county to county and judge to judge, but in most instances, I would be shocked if you had a divorce trial in less than 6 months.
Yeah. Judge, you touched on something. I want to bring this up. I get maybe 2 calls a year. I had one this year. People that try to do their own divorces themselves. You talked about that. Had a lady come to me, Judge. She said, Joe, I have filed for divorce 3 times. It's been kicked out 3 times. And I said, okay, we got it. And she said, well, how can you promise or guarantee me this? And you know this, ethically, under the state bar rules, I said, I can't promise you or guarantee you anything, but I think I know a little bit better about the process than you do. And, of course, she got divorced in 30 days. So you see that a lot, people that
see it all the time. Parties who genuinely are well-intentioned and they attempt to file the correct paperwork, but because the way the law is written in the state of Alabama, which I might add, judges don't have control over the way the law is written. We just have to follow it, just like everyone else. But because of the way it's written, certain T's have to be crossed and I's have to be dotted. And if you accidentally dot a T or cross an I, the judge doesn't have the authority to divorce you. And some people don't realize that. On a regular basis, I have people in my court who have better things to do than come spend time with me, but perhaps they didn't file testimony that needed to be filed. Perhaps they didn't specifically mention something in their testimony that's required to be in there. Maybe some form was prepared incorrectly, and I do my best to go through and help them with it, but as a judge, I can't give legal advice, and I can't tell people how to fill things out or what to put in a document, nor can my staff. That's why I think it's always a good idea to have a lawyer. And I'll say this, I've been divorced, and I had been a judge, and I had practiced divorce law when I was divorced. And I hired a lawyer because I knew the technicalities of it, but there's also there's so much emotion involved. I wanted an individual who could look at me and say, you're being unreasonable, or yes, I think that's a good idea. And that's where I think a lawyer can also be valuable.
Yeah. The other thing you were talking about, I've had one of those this year, Judge. Someone called me the other day, and she said, Joe, me and my husband, we filed our own divorce case, and it was approved, and the house is an issue, putting it on the market in the future, and she had the issue about alimony, and she had an issue about the 401k. Well, none of those were mentioned in the property settlement, and I said, ma'am, you cannot amend a property settlement. I said, there's nothing I can do to help you.
Yep. Property settlements are final. There are some things in divorce that can be modified or changed. Custody and visitation can be changed. Child support can be changed. Alimony can be changed. But if you have a property division, it is a final judgment and is not modifiable. And the only time I've ever seen a judge modify it is if both parties agreed to the change in that division. And 9 times out of 10, or 99 times out of 100, that won't happen.
That's right.
So it's best do it right the first time.
That's right. We're speaking with Judge Brian Huff today. This is Legal Lowdown with Joe Ingram on the South Side, 105.5 WERC. Yes, we're back, folks, for the second season. Stay tuned in the coming weeks. We're going to have a big announcement about being in other markets in 26. If you need a consultation, please call my office, 205-825-5297, 205-825-5297. You can either speak with Holly or Elizabeth, my intake specialist, and they'll be glad to get you in for a consult. If you have a criminal case and you need a consult, call us as well. We practice criminal law all over the state of Alabama, both federal criminal, state criminal, municipal criminal. So if you need us, give us a call. We're here to help you. We've got some big announcements coming in the coming weeks, and I'm looking forward to sharing those. I just want to remind you, next week, Senator Doug Jones, yes, Senator Doug Jones, who just announced he's running for governor of the state of Alabama, is going to be our guest with us in the studio. Judge?
I want to say something first. So this is the season premiere of the second season?
Well, last week was our first show for season 2.
Okay,
we started December of 24. Okay. Yes, sir.
I thought that I felt special there for a minute. I thought I was headlining the season premiere, but that's okay, Joe. I still love it.
Well, John, we'll call this the season premiere because last week was kind of like a practice run.
This is the encore season premiere.
There we go. I like that. The encore season premiere.
I'm good with spin
because this is the second hour.
Yeah.
There you go. Okay, so Judge, big question here. Not trying to put you on the spot.
It's okay, I guess.
All right. So let's say you have somebody come in, has filed a petition for Rule Nisi. One spouse has not paid alimony in 6 months. He's just decided, he or she, now, that person has decided that they're not going to comply with the court order. It is my opinion as a practitioner that the courts have become less stringent about putting people in jail. What's your thoughts from that, from the court's perspective?
I'll clear something up first because I'm assuming most of the listeners aren't lawyers. Joe mentioned a petition for Rule Nisi. That's a contempt petition where one party comes in and asks that the allegedly non-compliant party be found in contempt and perhaps incarcerated until such time as they comply. Personally, I have put people in jail for noncompliance. I haven't found, again, in my personal experience, that it's any more or less common than it was 20 years ago. However, I've heard lawyers say that they feel like across the board it's less common than it was 20 years ago. And I think the answer to your question is just the ultimate legal answer. It depends. If I have someone come in who has the ability to comply with my order, but they haven't done it, they stand a much higher risk of being incarcerated than someone who absolutely doesn't have the ability to comply. As a matter of fact, an inability to comply is a defense to contempt, and I couldn't put them in jail. But if someone comes in with the ability to comply and just refuses to comply, I may very well put them in jail given the correct circumstances. And I have to be kind of careful how I answer that question, not because I don't want to answer it, but because just like lawyers have rules they have to follow by the Alabama bar, judges also have rules that we have to follow, the canon of judicial ethics. And I know that no particular case is exactly the same. But let me say, I have incarcerated people in the past. It's not something that I enjoy doing, but if it's something that needs to be done, I'll absolutely do it.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right. Just want to get your thoughts on that.
Sure.
Okay. So, Judge, with the holiday season, and I've had this other day, I was up in St. Clair County yesterday with Judge Hill. All my clients, I try to get visitation lined up when I have custody cases during the holidays. What do you see this time of year between Thanksgiving through New Year's with the holidays and visitation? What's your experience of what you see from the court right now?
In relation to?
Well, we try to get it all worked out so nobody's going to be left out during the holidays.
Absolutely. And I mean, this year in particular, and I'm going to knock on wood, it has been a little slower in that department. People seem to be working out holiday visitation. I actually have a conference call that I have to do this afternoon where I have some lawyers in a case. They haven't worked it out yet, and so I'm going to give them some assistance. In years past, lawyers may wait until the last minute. They may wait until December the 22nd, and then they're starting to look at holiday visitation. Well, that's something that, in my opinion, you need to be looking at probably the middle of November, if not sooner. Depending on when you sign your agreement or when the order's entered, you might want to be thinking about it at that point in time. This year seems to be better in the court that I preside in. Yeah. And I don't know why that is. Probably, and I tell you, I'm going to say it's because I have good lawyers like you who went ahead and had some foresight and worked those issues out on the front end.
Yeah. We're getting better about that every year. We start in mid-November, especially if you close your office the week of Christmas. We say, hey, let's get all this lined up so nobody calls us with a 9/11 call the third week of December and say, hey, little Johnny's not going to get to go see their grandparents on the other side. So.
That's a great point. And I'll say, judges are human. I haven't had a vacation yet this year. I took off some time for Christmas last year. I've had a couple of work-related conferences I've had to go to, but I plan on being off for a week or so around Christmas. And while you might be able to get in touch with me, you might not be able to. So it's a good idea if you have a lawyer and you haven't yet worked out your holiday visitation, this show is going to air. Do we know what day?
It is on Saturday morning.
On Saturday, it might be a good idea to do it this week if it isn't too late.
Okay, Jay. All right, this is the Legal Lowdown with Joe Ingram on WERC 105.5 FM. We got Judge Brian Huff in the studio for the hour today, and we're so grateful for his time. Judge, you're running for re-election in 26, and I want to give you as much time as you need today. Please tell the average person out there in Jefferson County that votes what makes you such a great candidate to be a divorce judge in Jefferson County.
Joe, you caught me off guard. I didn't plan on coming in and campaigning. I'll say, I will be on the ticket in the Democratic primary on May the 19th. Right now, I'm the only person in the race, but I'll tell you about myself, and hope it stays that way, but I'll tell you about myself a little bit. I've already told you, but I've been practicing law and being a judge for 30 years. I've been president of the Alabama Juvenile Judges Association. I have been chairman of the Alabama State Bar Family Law Section. I have the experience, I believe, that is needed to maintain this position. I tell people all the time, I have sat in every chair in that courtroom. I have been, my parents were divorced when I was a child, and they got back together, thank God, but I know what it's like to be a child in court. I have been divorced myself, and I know what that experience is like. I have been a lawyer for years representing litigants in a divorce, and I know what that's like. And obviously, at this point, I'm a judge in divorces, presiding over divorces, and I know what that's like. I think the most important thing that a judge can have in any type of a family law situation is empathy. Doesn't mean you shouldn't be firm. It doesn't mean you shouldn't hold people's feet to the fire, but I think it helps greatly to have an understanding of what it's like to be on the other side of the bench. And I know what it's like to be in every single chair in that courtroom. And I hope you will vote for me on May the 19th, 2026. Thank you for that opportunity, Jeff.
Oh, you're welcome, Your Honor. Hey, Judge, we were talking during the break. We were talking about court cost and fees related to a divorce, and I brought up a interesting question about court reporters in Jefferson County. Mm-hmm. We go to Shelby County, I have a court reporter. I go to St. Clair County, I have a court reporter. We don't have court reporters anymore in Jefferson County. Please explain why, Judge.
Back when Chief Justice Roy Moore was Chief Justice, we had some budget cuts in the state of Alabama. And one of the things we did at that point in time, all the court reporters were laid off. We had a huge cut in judicial staffing. At some years later, many of those staff were rehired, with the exception of circuit and district judges who hear civil cases and domestic relations cases. What you have to remember, when you go to a smaller county, whether it's St. Clair County, whether it's Shelby County, whether it's Walker County, those judges typically hear a variety of cases. They may have a criminal docket one day, they may have a divorce docket the next day, they may have a civil docket the following day with car accidents and things like that. Well, the law as it stands now requires those judges to have court reporters for their criminal dockets. In a county like Jefferson, we're what I would call, and I'm putting up air quotes, you can't see it, but we have specialized dockets. We have a criminal division where those judges only hear criminal cases. They have court reporters. We have a circuit civil division where those judges only hear civil cases. They don't have court reporters. We're in the domestic relations division where we only hear divorces, which is a civil case, so we don't have court reporters. So that's an important thing. If you want a record, if you want the opportunity to appeal your case, because I'll admit, I make mistakes. I'm a human being, just like everyone else out there. It's best to bring a court reporter with you so that when you file that appeal, if you don't like my decision, the Court of Civil Appeals can review and see what went on and what mistake I might have made. Otherwise, you may not have an appeal.
And for the average person out there, they're not going to know this term. It's or tennis testimony. Mm-hmm. And most people don't understand that when they go through a divorce case, that even if you have the record, it's or tennis testimony.
Exactly. The or tennis rule means that the judge is presumed to be correct because they had the opportunity to view the witness's demeanor and hear the testimony live and in person in front of them. So there must be some sort of obvious error in their decision.
Very good, Judge. All right, we only got about minutes left. Folks, this is my final word for the week. And next week, tune in to Senator Doug Jones. He's going to be in the studio. How is it, as people, that we make the same mistakes over and over? We spend 70 to 80 years on this earth and repeat the same issues and behaviors again. One, it's part of our journey of our own. Two, it's part of our personal story from childhood. I've said this before over and over again. We are 8 years old living in an adult body. What you were as a child, you are as an adult. And three, innate behavior. I'll say it again, innate behavior. My advice is to evolve, grow, to be a better person. Step out. Make a difference in your community for generations to come in the past. And folks, thank you for listening to the show. Thank you to Judge Huff today.
Joe, thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.
All right. Folks, next week, Senator Doug Jones in the house. Got to have a good week. Got to go. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the Legal Lowdown with your lawyer, Joe Ingram of Joe Ingram Law. Don't forget to follow Joe's Legal Lowdown podcast on iHeart. If you need a private legal consultation, reach out to Joe on his website, joeingramlaw.com. Tune in again next Saturday for the Legal Lowdown with Joe Ingram. No representation is made that the quality of legal services to be performed is greater than the quality of legal services performed by any other lawyer.